Start the recording, please, facilitator. Thank you kindly. So welcome everybody, a big welcome. Welcome back to the APAC TVET Forum breakout sessions. My name is David Penny and I'm from the Skills Consulting Group. And I'm going to be the moderator for today's session in the Education New Zealand room. Now over the next 40 minutes, we've got a nice presentation for you from the senior lecturer from Otago Polytechnic, New Zealand, named Dr. Faisal Hasan. Faisal's presentation is titled An Industry Academia Partnership Model for Mitigating the IT Skills Gap, and covers an innovative model of work-based learning in a sector that does not usually participate in work-based learning. So as we get started today, I'd like to go over a couple of technical things. Just down the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's an interpretation function with both English and Mandarin options. Please select the option that is relevant to you, and you'll hear the translation when relevant. Also, we'll be having a 20-minute Q&A at the end of the session, and we encourage you to post questions both throughout the session and at the end of the session that I'll be able to deliver to Faisal on your behalf at the end. And that's in the Q&A button down the bottom of your screen. So let's get started. Please warmly welcome our speaker today, Dr. Faisal Hasan. Over to you.
Thank you, David. So this is a great opportunity for us to present in such a venue where we have audiences from all over the world. And I think it's a really interesting topic. I think not only in New Zealand, all over Asia Pacific, it is interesting how IT skills are on demand, but at the same time, we don't have enough people to fill in some of the roles. So one of the reasons I decided to talk about this is that I came across this article, this news from NZ Tech. They actually did some survey a couple of months ago, and they actually provided some grim picture in New Zealand. Like it is talking about every year we are getting 4,000 to 5,000 skilled IT professionals in New Zealand from overseas. But due to the COVID, our border is locked, and we are not getting enough people to cover up those positions. So the industry is really calling out for help, and that actually, you know, I could have like this thing that, okay, this is something that's happening, what we can do about this problem. So, and this is not only just in New Zealand, but also if you look at the data, this is also in all over the different countries as well. So at one extreme, we have people that don't have jobs, but other extreme, we have a lot of places we don't find people. So let's look at like what is the solution that look like, and I will talk about work-based learning. It's something that we've been practicing almost like 2 years here at the Otago Polytechnic. And so to give a perspective at the beginning, I will give a perspective about the situation in New Zealand, and that is coming from a really amazing research done by New Zealand Tech, NZ Tech, which is the kind of a key player in the New Zealand Association of Tech Industries. And they actually did a comprehensive survey and found some interesting data. And that data is visible in the screen here, and you can see that there's significant amount of issues here. Like if you look at the number of people getting into IT and the school level, like in New Zealand started something for digital curriculum in the school level, but only 30% students are actually getting into there. And the number of students getting into there is decreasing 2% every year. And out of these students, only 1,850 students get into the degree programs, not the certificate ones, the degree ones. And then the number that's quite significant is that I was astonished to see that, is that number of opportunities for students to get into internships. So if you can look at this data here, in the middle, it says only 352 people who got internships in 2019 out of almost like 2,699 applications. So that number is really, really low. And so on the other extreme, there is a significant problem in diversity. If you look at the numbers here, it shows only 27% people in the workforce are like female, and only 4% are Maori, and 2.8% are Pacifica students. So that's definitely, it sets the kind of a big picture in New Zealand, what's happening here. And also, like in this diagram, you can see that quite a big number of people are actually coming in from outside to work in the IT industry. So in New Zealand, the IT industry is like the demand for IT industry, the people is highly skilled people. So people who have a lot of experiences, and usually inside the country, we don't have that many people with that skill. So With the border being closed, these numbers are not looking good this time. So what do we do about it? So there are a couple of interesting takeaways from that research done by NZTech, and so this is some of the key findings that caught my attention. Is that a couple of years ago, in 2017, New Zealand government established 3 ICT graduate schools, which was basically one step to bridge the gap between the industry and academia. So students are given projects with the industry. So they work, they study at the universities or tertiary institutions, but they also work with the industry at a significant part of their credits. So, and that was quite interesting that there's a 59% growth in graduates with digital skills with that program alone. Other interesting point from that research is basically internships are effective, although these are difficult to find, and actually it converts to employments. And other thing that's happening around the world this moment is like some of the big tech players like Microsoft, Google, or some online platforms like Coursera, Udacity, or Harvard edX program. They're doing amazing work in terms of giving people opportunities in some of the really kind of cutting edge tools and technologies that people need to work in the IT industry these days. And to my surprise, you know, I always thought of like the vendor certifications are like not good enough, but I'm happy to say that this time I'm really surprised to see the amount of efforts people, I mean, all the big companies are providing to design the curriculum and the lab materials so that people can learn their skills in a short time. So this is good. But the problem with this approach is that it doesn't allow people to have the real experience. And at the same time, it doesn't have any capability to build people's, I mean, one of the key criteria for employment these days are soft skills like collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking. So you can get a certificate, but you won't be able to achieve those just by going to the online programs. And also the other problem I found with this approach is that sometimes these programs are quite prescripted. That means you follow the instruction, you do the lab, and it's done. So the learning doesn't happen unless the user is really proactive and interested to do that. I myself have completed certifications before, and I can say that I don't have to do the labs to do the certification, although it's kind of really, I mean, recommended, but you can get away without doing the labs to get certification. So that's the scenario, but still it is an opportunity for people to upskill themselves. So the bottom line is that in New Zealand, as I was talking before, it's most of the jobs are for highly skilled people, and there's a very low number of job entries for like entry junior level roles. So what do we do about it? So this is kind of a gap. We can see that we have, in one way, we have a shrinking pipeline. Less people are getting into the ICT sector in the graduate levels. And also the people we have here, we have quite a big number of students already graduated, but they don't have the right skills to take up the jobs, as the jobs are mostly like high level skills. So, and as we know, like work-based learning is one of the areas which is getting a lot of attention these days from all over the world to mitigate these gaps. So one of the problems in this work-based learning approach is that we don't know how IT fits into the work-based learning, because work-based learning in IT is kind of a new thing. Like many other disciplines like nursing or medicine or carpentry, automobile, it is a common practice, but for IT, it is kind of a new area. So the whole idea of work-based learning is that because we have a skill shortage, skill gap at this moment right now, but what's going to happen in next 10 years, because we have an aging population, like many developing countries have aging population. If we have a skill shortage right now, what's going to happen in 10 years, you can imagine, because all the people are aging. So we have to make every opportunity to bring in more people to the industry with the right skills. So work-based learning allows this to have like a learning in every places, like every workplace becomes a learning institution, every educational institution becomes a learning institution. So, and there needs to be some sort of a collaboration between these two. So let's look at some of the, one of the definitions of work-based learning that I quite like, and I think is quite appropriate in this context. So one of the definitions by Board is talking about like it's kind of a university programs that brings together universities and work organizations to create learning opportunities in workplace. So it's a collaboration between the university and workplaces. So it has to have some sort of matching learning outcomes. So both parties should have some agreements on that. So there are three types of work-based learning. The one we know very often is the internship, which is basically learning for work. And students go there to some working place and work for a couple of weeks or months, and they get some relevant skill, then they can come back to the institution for further study, or they can go to the jobs. So that's kind of understandable, that learning for work. And learning at work is basically, in many institutions, you have the option to do e-learning or do some more training provided inside the institution, inside the workplace. So the employees can get new skills or upskill themselves. And that's also really important. Like if you think of solving this problem, so if the people working in the industry can upskill themselves, then there will be new opportunities for junior roles, and that actually helps the move the pipeline a bit faster. So that's the learning at work. And other option is learning through work, where it is like learning at work, but at the same time, the employees can get accredited certification or some degrees from other educational institutions. So that also an option. So like three options. And so the problem with the IT as like the work-based learning model is that IT is different, because it is pretty much like a mental model. If you think of like somebody who wants to design software and he gets to a workplace, and if he doesn't understand the basics or some of the fundamental design principles, it's not possible for that person to just watch somebody doing some code, writing some code, and like learn from that. So that's challenging. And other problem is already we have such a shortage, then you cannot have extra person to train these people. So I'm not sure like how effective that is if we just increase the number of internships without having the resources for mentoring those interns in that place. So it is important that students have the ability to catch up with the new learning and have the innovative quality to do that. So as an education institution, we always have to think about like we have to be producing students who can solve the problems of future. At the same time, they are employable. So innovation and employability, there's like compromise between these two things, how much you do. So traditionally, many university programs are more innovative. So they are focusing on research and designing things, but that doesn't translate quite well with the straightaway learning pathway. So that's one of the things. So in our case, in the Bachelor of IT program in Otago Polytechnic, we have experienced the problem of placing students in internships. Like we have a 2-semester long project or studio paper, which is like a level 7 paper. Kind of you can think of it, ideally it should be the students going to work and they should work there and learn stuff, and they actually learn the real life skill. But for us in a place like Dunedin, we don't have that option to get like 30 or 40 students every semester to send internships. And we also don't know like what sort of job they will be doing in the internships. If it doesn't match with the learning outcome, then I think it might not be helpful for them. So we actually adopted something called a simulated model. We have something like, in my team, like I do operations and security. We have I work as a manager, and I have another person from the system admin team. He works as the client. And then we have other lecturers, they also work as client, and they have their own problems to solve, and they have to approach the students, and the students have to talk to them and find, okay, what are the requirements, what they can do. So it's pretty much like they're out in the industry and talking to the clients, and they have to report to me like the way they have to report to the managers. So, but it is kind of interesting because we try to give them real life problems. Like, for example, if the students are working on system admin or security things, it's impossible to get them to in a real life work area to configure the server or something like that. So nobody will do that. So but we have a situation because we have our system admin working with us, so the students can do some of the work that is like a real kind of work. So for example, last 2 years we've been working with the students to migrate our setup, like teaching and learning setup. We use quite a lot of virtual machines from the kind of a vSphere to Azure. So the students are learning about those things while they're actually moving things. And we always check whether they're doing, because we have the bandwidth, we know what the learners actually know, and we know what they need to learn to get this project done. So that's quite interesting that we have the bandwidth to do that because we don't have a huge number of students. We know what the students are doing, and that gives an opportunity to work on these things. And other thing is that we are always looking for industry partnership, and we have established academy with AWS and recently Fortinet and also Cisco for a while. So students get to know about those certification programs, but this is in a context of solving problems, not like doing the certification that for the sake of certification. So they are solving a problem, they can look at the certification content and pick up some ideas and do that. So that actually works very, very well for them to learn the certification at the same time, apply the knowledge to solve real life problems. So and so some of the example problems we can talk about here, like one of the major things that students are doing last 2 years is like migrating our resources from internal vSphere to Azure. And that means that students have to know how to, how the existing system works, what are the requirements to migrate, and how the migration happens, what can you do with that, and the security settings. And so that's an interesting practical experience to have. And that's pretty much like they will be working in the industry in future to solve these kind of problems. The other innovative problem we actually are doing is we have a setup called Things Network, which is a low bandwidth video network for connecting Internet of Things devices. So this is a really good setup. We already have it in place. So this semester, some of my students actually, changed the gateway, like it is live system. So they had the chance to change some of the gateway from version to the version 3. So that's kind of a real life experience for them. And as they're doing, they got mentorship from the instructors and other people involved. So the other projects we've done is like we do with malware as part of security. We create a framework that students can actually play with the malware and learn about the malware in a contained environment. So that actually gives them an opportunity to see how the malware behaves, and then they can apply solutions. These are some of the practical extracts that we do. So the key success factor for our model to work is that active instructors. It is vital that we always have to reach out to people. We have partnered with, like some of the local companies, and especially the companies which does a lot of community work and like to do innovation, not just like simple things. So, like for example, we have a very good partnership with a smart lab called United Scientists, where we have people like really smart people working on solving problems, and our students go there, and we actually have one student like getting a paid internship there, doing really smart things like making a open source 3D printer, that kind of stuff. And we established partnership with CCL who help us some of the getting some jobs for our students. Not only that, they help us to make the students more aware of the job skills that they need, so the students can communicate with some of their managers all the time whenever they need to. And they also help us to get some of the students to Christchurch to see their data center with the help of a sponsorship from Fortinet. So this is the way we actually work together with the industry partners. A win-win situation. They also are getting people who are getting kind of skill in their area, but we're also getting a hands-on experience at the same time. So the other thing we do is basically we have a local like an IT professionals association. It's called Codecraft. We host them downstairs. So that actually an opportunity for students to go downstairs and just talk to them and find out what's happening here. But interesting is that 50% people who go there, IT professionals, they're actually working for US companies. I think if you look at the New Zealand IT market this time, it is changing, and because you can work from anywhere. So that's also a challenge. You have IT professionals, but they are not working yet. They're working remotely. So, to summarize, like the model we developed actually has all the 3 components that I presented. Because learning at work happens, we are providing guided tutorials, all the lessons to students to solve the problems. Then we have learning for work happening because the students are working in a collaborative environment. So they are working as a team. Then they're also solving real problems, pretty much like the kind of work they would like to do in the ideal situation in the industry setting. And then learning through work happens because the students are highly encouraged to do certification. They can choose any certification they want to do. And we want to be, like not vendor locked. We want to apply some of the vendor things, but the students can choose which setup they do. Like, for example, in my security class, I can say, okay, you can choose any cloud platform. You can choose AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, or OpenStack. You find whatever you're comfortable with, and the students choose different things. All right, so that's quite interesting. So we have this pathway. We have a couple of courses that aligns very well with our project as a center. So, like, for example, at the beginning, they learn Linux operating system, and that's quite interesting because a lot of students don't have any exposure to command line or like shell scripting, that kind of stuff. And they learn about like IP tables, how to secure a gateway, which is kind of a building block for many of the cloud solutions we work with in the other, higher level courses. Then there's a new paper that's called Operational Engineering that introduces PowerShell, then introduces Azure and AWS, then also the containers. So the students actually, can get a good sense of what is cloud computing and what you do with it, what you cannot do with it. Then they move to Studio after doing these two papers. And the Studio, the paper I just mentioned, like 700 or Studio 5 and 6, renamed recently. And we actually restructured our whole curriculum recently. And we put like the project-based learning as like a priority for like from the beginning, they have like a project-based collaborative projects in every year. And so Studio 5 and 6 is like level 7-1. Then they do Operations Engineering 2, which is very interesting. It doesn't have any exams. It is basically, they are given some virtual machines and they have to maintain the virtual machine like the way they would do in a workplace. And that's quite interesting. And the assessments are quite interesting too. So then the other papers, they do a lot of cloud stuff. Like they learn open source, like how to build a cloud from scratch using open source tools. Then they learn like open stack, and we have support from Cloud Catalyst Cloud to give us free access to some of the resources. And then also they learn Google Cloud or any other cloud platform they can do. They delve into Kubernetes and that kind of stuff. And lastly, the security program, it's quite interesting. It's this level 7 program. So we've been offered to have like a look at the level 6 diploma that's been designed and deployed in many institutions, but we are a bit reluctant about it at this moment. We're thinking about it because we're not sure like how can we get internship for our 30 students every semester, all right? But it is interesting that it's a different pathway for level 6 certification, and that's many people are liking it, so that's good. But it will take some time for us to see whether we can adjust that or not. So, for security, our idea is that security is not just like a level 7 paper. It's spread across all the other fields. Like if somebody is doing web design, they also learn security. If somebody is doing coding, they also have like some coding best practices for security. It's spread all across the world. And we don't teach like security, just security, basically theoretical things. We are pretty hands-on, and our focus is on creating a security mindset. So how to think critically and how to do things in a different way. So it is quite interesting. So the bottom line is that we need to be informed with the demand in the industry, what's happening, what is needed what sort of skills needed in the industry. So in that way, I have one of my colleagues, like, when I was preparing this presentation, I found that research, and it's kind of done by one of the project students. It's quite interesting, like you can find out real-time data about what is available, what is demanded in the job market at this moment. So I'm just giving a few minutes to my colleague David here. He can present about this interesting research. David, please.
So thank you very much, Faisal, for letting me briefly speak in your presentation about something that is quite related. As Faisal mentioned, it is important for us as academic institutions to be aware of what sort of skills industry needs so we can prepare students to give them that industry requires. And I think there's many approaches to doing this properly. And I think one of them, part of the mix to solve this problem, should be to use a data-driven approach to finding out what is needed in the New Zealand industry. So in order to do that, a couple of my students supervised by me during the past semester, they have been working on a system that monitors hundreds and thousands of job advertisements in New Zealand and creates summaries of what sort of IT skills are needed in the job market of New Zealand, in the New Zealand context. So at this stage, this is still a prototype, but we want to take it to the next level, perhaps expand it for other professions as well, perhaps use it to inform Te Pukenga what sort of skills we should be teaching based on this data-driven, informed decision-making instead of just using our own guesses as academics that sometimes might be detached from reality and might inadvertently incorporate our own biases. So this is, as I said, like an early prototype. We're able to look for a specific job like web developer or IT security or testing support, etc. And we get this overall summary of, for a specific job, for example, software developer, what sort of frameworks are in demand in these job advertisements? What sort of skills, soft skills are needed? What sort of cloud providers are the most widely used? What sort of databases are mentioned in these job advertisements as being in high demand? And I think using this data, which can be updated daily, could help us as academics a lot to inform our decision making about what sort of tools to use in the classroom to prepare our students to serve the needs of industry. And I will stop here and give the talk back to Faisal.
Thank you, David. I think that was quite interesting, and we are quite. So let's go to my last slide. I think in future, I think we need to have pathways for industry people from the industry to upskill themselves. So we are working on, I think in future we'll be doing more micro credentials, so people from industry can come in and do some work at the same time. And we I think the politics are in a good position to have kind of creating this skill workforce, because we are hands-on, we work close with industry, so there's a lot of opportunity here. And definitely the support from the industry partners actually is really good thing. So this is my last slide, and I just love this Maori phrase. Thank you so much. You can stop sharing. Yes, David.
Thank you very much, Faisal. Thank you to your guest David as well, the unexpected speaker. We really appreciate you presenting to us today. I think that was really interesting, but particularly the potential that I think these kinds of models have to bring work-relevant education into programs that are traditionally more knowledge-based and open up the potential of work-based education to a much, much wider audience. So thank you for that. Now we have some time left for a question and answer session. We've got about 11 minutes for this. We'll try to make the most of our time. If you have any extra questions for either Faisal or David, you can add them to the Q&A feature down the bottom of the screen using the Q&A button. Our question we had first from the chat section, however, is from Jennifer Vickers. She says, great presentation, thank you. What do you think Te Pukenga or the government needs to do to make it easier for New Zealand subject matter experts to be able to take interns?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it's a collaborative approach that I would think, more dialogue with the industry. And I mean, I believe in a principle like nothing about us without us. All right. So we got to be playing an important role. Like we got to say, okay, what we want to do. I think if we have all collaboration in place, and I think there's a gap with the industry and the academia. I've been into the space where I go to industry, oh, you're from academia, you don't fit here. Also, I come to academia, people coming from industry to academia, oh, you're from the industry, you don't know anything. But we have a really good setup. Like we have people from industry coming and teaching in our place. So, I mean, the more collaboration, I would say also like more engagement with some of the key players shaping the industry at this moment. I mentioned some of the key players in my talk here. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer, Faisal. Minor correction, sorry, it was small to medium enterprises from Jennifer rather than subject matter experts. That's my mistake.
Oh, yeah.
The next question here is from Jaime Latif. She says, how about highly experienced IT personnel who have been in the IT field for more than 10 years, but don't have a degree or formal qualification? How can academia a tailor-made pathway for them to get a degree, but by recognizing their experience?
Yeah, that's a good question, and thank you, Jaime, for asking this. I think we have had a couple of scenarios like people from industry. Like I have a person like he was a CEO in one of the Dunedin companies doing work at the BIT. I think he's doing it for a long time, and his feedback was that every time he comes back and takes a new course, and he actually have new learning. So I think that's the engagement we're talking about. But in this case, I would feel like the work-based learning approach is a good approach, but still we actually don't know how to do that in IT space. So, I mean, having these certification programs definitely helps. So people are interested to do certification, but sometimes they need a little bit of extra help or something like that. And also, I mean, we can tailor it in a way that suits them. Like, for example, for the certification materials, we just don't follow the curriculum from the vendors. We tweak those things to make the learning and adjustments aligned. So if we continue to do that, like bringing in new pathways for these people to from the industry to upskill and get certification, I think that will open the doors for them.
Great, thank you again. Now we have another question from an anonymous attendee saying, what do you think of cross-regional internships? For example, a certain student who studies in Taranaki gets internships in Invercargill. Would the curriculum they have learned in their home region be useful in another region? And what would Te Pukenga? Sorry,
yeah,
just the first part.
Yeah, so that's absolutely a good question. I feel like, you know, the kind of stuff we're doing, it's global. It's not just local. Like, you know, if you're learning about cloud, you actually can do anything from anywhere, right? The same technology you're working, but we are focused more about thinking, you know, the critical mindset, the problem solving, and, you know, these soft skills as well. So I think it's easily, you know, possible for somebody to go to a different place and adjust, but there are some challenges sometimes if there is no good payment and stuff like that, and the students are not willing to go and move there. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. And there's a second part to the anonymous question as well. So what would Te Pukenga need to do to ensure consistency and robustness in curriculum design? So I assume it's between the regions there.
I think it's really important, like I just mentioned the line, nothing about us without us. Right? You know, there are really passionate people in the all the different politics, and we need to be in the same frame. And we are happy to help and collaborate with Te Pukenga because it's a good understanding and it's a good model. And if New Zealand can set the standards, I think that's a great thing for Asia Pacific, I would say, you know. So I think more engagement, more collaboration, and more like specific things instead of like, oh, we do cybersecurity, but you know, what do you do in cybersecurity? What specific skill you're working on? So it should be based on data-driven model.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Martin from the comments section. He thanks you for the very interesting presentation. And he asks, how can you train an interdisciplinary workforce? Should there be new study programs or new approaches to organizing courses?
I think so, absolutely. I think we are going through one of the biggest transition at this moment, you know, with the COVID and the way technology is taking place. I think we have to be innovative. And, you know, if somebody has a new idea of, you know, like, for example, teaching engineering or something in a different way, I mean, the academia has been traditional for a long time. It's time to shift, I think. And Te Pukenga or any other organization support this kind of innovative models, you know, because, you know, innovation comes from the edges and it can make a big impact in the center later on. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question from Jennifer Vickers. She's saying, it's possibly addressed to David, but we'll see. The data analysis looks really interesting and valuable. How soon can we have the results? The New Zealand tech research shows skills gaps rather than shortages. Do you think we might be able to save students from studying things employers do not want?
Yeah, so there's several questions there. In terms of the speed of getting these results, this is instantaneously because we can monitor these job advertisements on a daily basis. So we can adjust very quickly to changes in industry or new frameworks that emerge, etc. And in terms of saving teaching students skills that they will not need, I think we absolutely should be able to do that. And by monitoring with automated tools what the industry is implicitly telling us that they need, that would be one way of addressing that. But I think it's just one component of many that should work together. As Faisal mentioned, we should also be constantly talking with industry professionals. And I think it would be very important if more people teaching in Te Pukenga would have this unique feature of being with a feet in industry, with a feet in academia, which is something very unusual, but we need more of those people.
Definitely. Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions actually as well, and I think we have an opportunity just to get to a couple of those. One of them was, when we talk about work-based learning, one of the key benefits to that is the sort of economic productivity gains that some learners can give organizations as they're embedded that have a real impact on the economy. So I was wondering, is there a future direction in the models that you're applying to take problems from industry, take your same problem-solving approach and apply the solutions within organizations you might partner with to generate those productivity gains?
Absolutely. I mean, what we are showing, like the students are capable of doing it. And I mean, with the changing landscape, I think the biggest problem, what I feel is that our graduates getting, jobs, okay, that's fine, entry-level service-desk job, but they shouldn't be there for years because they got the skills, and in some cases, our students have more advanced certifications than some of the people they're working in the industry. So, but they are stuck in the same place for years. So industry have to have a fresh mindset to adjust with the, real scenario right now. We have a gap here, and we are willing to cooperate with industry, and we are always looking for projects that is suitable for our learners. And also, like, we want to be integrated totally, as the definition of work-based learning says, the kind of a space between the educational institution and the workplace is kind of a blurry. So it is all integrated. So in future, I think if we have more collaboration, more understanding about each other's learning outcomes and expectation, I think that can happen.
Great, thank you. I also have one more question as well. This is one of the most interesting points I found from the talk. And it's to do with the non-conventional field, I suppose, that IT is for work-based learning. We don't often see work-based learning approaches in the IT field. So I was wondering if you had any insights as to how these new and innovative work-based learning approaches could be applied in other similarly, traditionally academic fields such as IT.
Yeah, that's interesting. But for IT, I think it is a bit easier with some conditions, like you got to have very active lecturers, and you got to have institution which is having people from the industry coming in every now and then, and bringing in ideas, having that dynamic kind of attitude in the curriculum design and stuff like that really helps. And also, like IT, like we use tools which is kind of a global tools. If you use Azure, it's always, if you use like other things everywhere. But many other industries, it might be a bit challenging because there might be local standards or local way of doing it. So, but still, it's possible to do this model. I think some of the places they adopted this kind of model with simulation and that kind of thing, and that also is an interesting model. Like I know like people who wants to fly, they can do flight simulation and that kind of stuff. So always possible. But I think for IT, it's more opportunities to have this kind of model which can bring the industry and academia together with some global technical standards.
Great, thank you very much. I think we're just on time, actually. Thank you for everyone for your attendance, and thank you very much to Faisal Hasan and David for your presentation today. I think it was very insightful. To our attendees, it is now time to head back to the auditorium to join our keynote speaker, Mr. Raghav Gupta from Coursera. We'll see you there.
Thank you.
And once again, thank you very much. Thank you again to the facilitator as well as the interpreters who are still on the line. Appreciate your help today.